Fred Astaire lived his whole life making movies look great. There was nothing wrong with a single step, smile, or bow tie. Then, in 2025, a lost picture from 1950 showed up online. It went viral right away. Fred seems worn out, broken, and almost beaten. Fans say it breaks their hearts. The real shock came when they looked at the back of the picture. Fred had penciled something down that not anyone should have seen. Those words show why he was really hurting behind all of his charm. The Dancing King was hiding something from everyone. His birthday is May 10, 1899, and he was born in Omaha, Nebraska. It was Frederick Austerlitz that he was real. Fritz was his father. He came to the U.S. from Austria in 1893 to make a better life for himself. He sold beer for a living and made just enough to get by. And, Fred's mother, was born into a German immigrant family and taught piano to make money for the family. Fred was only 3 years old when she noticed something different. It looked like he was dancing like his bigger sister Adele. She thought that show business could help them get out of poverty, and that thought would affect their whole lives. Fred started dancing on the side by watching Adele in 1903, when he was only 4 years old. Her first dance class was at the Chambers Dance Academy in Omaha, and Fred soon joined her. After 2 years, in 1905, Fritz lost his job and the family had to move to New York City. They owed over $200 and were in a lot of trouble. And didn't give up, though. She put both of her kids through dance school, and by 1906, Fred and Adele were doing small theater shows that made them $50 each. Fred was only 7 years old, but he danced for a long time, sometimes 12 hours a day. Back then, there were no rules to protect children. Even though they didn't have much, and took care of everything and kept going. Fred also picked up the piano, the accordion, and the clarinet so he could add to their show. By the time they were 7, the kids had a name, the Astaires. They went on tour through the Midwest, playing up to 20 shows a week. For each job, they got about $150, which helped the family a lot. Fred practiced 8 hours a day and worked very hard. Dancers like Bill Bojangles Robinson made him want to learn how to dance, so he did. But they used fake names because some places wouldn't let kids under 14 act on stage. Fred put on a show as Freddie Austin. In 1908, they went back to Omaha and performed at the Orpheum Theater. The crowd loved them. They got flowers every week and made $150 a week. But things didn't get better. Fred started to get shorter than Adele, and by 1912, the difference was too big to hide on stage. They didn't talk for 2 years. Something scary took place in 1909, when Fred was only 10 years old. His body stopped moving during a show in Keyport, New Jersey. I got stage fright. The organizers lost $200 because they had to cancel the show. To keep his good name, his mother told everyone he was sick. Fred was worn out. That year, he had already done over 300 shows. He said that event had been following him around for many years. He always seemed to be worried, so Adele made fun of him by calling him the Moaning Minnie. But Fred turned his fear into something that drove him. He worked at it over and over again until he was good at it. Fred was 13 years old and Adele was 16 years old by 1912. When they went back to acting, they had a new energy and made their routines better by looking at Vernon and Irene Castle as inspiration. They moved to England in 1923 to have better luck and became stars of a show called Stop Flirting. At the Shaftesbury Theatre, it was put on 418 times. And gave them $4,000 a week. Even though London was still aware of the war, Fred learned new skills during that time. Fred's dad died of cancer in 1924. He kept going even though it was a hard year. Adele even taught the Prince of Wales how to tap dance, and he came to see them 11 times. In 1917, they made a big step forward in America. Adele was 21 and Fred was 18. The Patriotic Review, which came out on November 28, 1917, gave them a spot right on top. They were given $250 a week, which is more than $6,000. Fred made them practice late into the night. Their hard work was noticed by critics, who said their act was one of the best parts of the show. Another first for Fred was putting up a full-page ad for himself in Variety magazine. It paid off to take that risk. They were in The Bunch and Judy in 1922. People didn't like the show itself, but the Astairs stood out. Adele was dating Lord Charles Cavendish, a British nobleman she met in London. They were seeing each other in secret. The tabloids started to follow her around, taking pictures of her and making hints about a royal match. It took more work for Fred to keep the act going when Adele went on secret dates. There were only 63 performances of the show, and things were getting worse. After that, Lady, Be Good came out in 1924. It was a huge hit when it came out on December 1st. Fred danced so hard that he needed a bucket of water just off stage to cool down. The music was written by the Gershwin brothers. The show played 330 times in New York and made $55,000 in its first week. Before going to London for another 326 days, they made a unique record with an interesting rhythm. Only 500 copies were made. A record from those years ago was added to the Library of Congress. Funny Face opened in 1927. It was crazy and new. The first time Fred wore a top hat and tails, he mixed jazz and tap in a whole new way. It was hard to practice for the show, and after getting bad reviews in Philadelphia, the name was changed from Smarty. But after it opened on November 22nd, it ran for 244 shows in New York and another 263 in London. The press was more interested in Adele's friendship with Cavendish than in the dancing. Everyone thought there would be a wedding. The last show they did together was The Train in 1931. It began on June 3rd. The reviewers really liked it, especially a dark and slow dance number to Dancing in the Dark. But Adele had already made up her mind behind the scenes. She was going to get married to Cavendish and never appear on stage again. Even though Fred tried to change her mind, she was set on what she wanted to do. The last curtain fell on them on March 5, 1932. After 27 years of dancing together, they were done. Was 32, and he was now on stage by himself. Fred then took a huge risk. He took a plane to Hollywood for a try role. RKO wrote a story about him on July 26, 1933. It said he was going bald, couldn't act, was a little attractive, and danced a bit. It made me feel bad. He could only make $750 a week, which was less than Ginger Rogers, his co-star. Almost someone else took his place after the first week. Everything changed though when people saw him dance in Flying Down to Rio. Introducing Fred Astaire was added to the new banners. But there was pain behind that success. Fred made 105 takes of a dance scene in the same movie on September 12, 1933. It was only 40 seconds long. It cost a lot of money for each take. The cost was $27,000 more than planned. He started being called difficult by studio managers, and other studios used that to give him less money. But that's when Fred became well known. To be perfect and in charge. And always looking for the best take. Fred got into a big fight over costumes in 1934, when he was shooting The Gay Divorce. He didn't like how Ginger Rogers' dress moved. What did it look like? A flying bedsheet, he said. 17 dresses were turned down until he found one that met his standards. He even said that diamonds bigger than a certain size were not allowed. Still, the movie made $1.8 million, even though it only cost $800,000. This kept the company from losing a lot of money. Rogers finally got the same amount of screen time as Fred, but after that, every outfit had to go through Fred. After that, Top Hat came out in 1935. Fred dreamed that he was dancing on a roof that was spinning. A steel turntable was used to build the set. But while it was being tested, it got stuck, and Ginger Rogers broke her foot. There was no work for 18 days. There were rumors that the set had been hacked. Fred's requests made people dislike him. Even though no one proved anything, it made things even more tense than they were before. Rogers came back and danced while wearing an ankle brace. The group made fun of her by calling her Chicken Little. Because the feathers in her shoes kept falling off. During the swing era in 1936, Fred got into a fight with the director over a song. He didn't want to dub it, he wanted to sing it live. He threatened to quit if they dubbed it. The movie company gave up. Fred had a microphone hidden in his coat, but you could hear that he was breathing hard and had some trouble with his pitch. Some reviewers didn't like that, but the people who saw it loved it. In just 6 months, the music sold 110,000 copies. The Way You Look Tonight won the Oscar for Best Song. Something magical took place in Hollywood from 1933 to 1937. Fred Astaire went from being a dancer on Broadway to becoming one of the biggest movie stars all of a sudden. He got his start when he was given third billing in the 1933 movie Flying Down to Rio. Things changed when people saw him dance with Ginger Rogers. They worked together on 9 musicals in just 6 years, and 6 of them were RKO's highest-grossing movies. He made $177,000 from his 7th movie, Shall We Dance?, which came out in 1937. That was more money than Katharine Hepburn made that year. He was an expert behind the scenes. He worked out so much that Ginger Rogers once left the gym with cut feet after doing the same dance 54 times. Because the company gave him 10% of the profits as a reward, he no longer had to worry about being tied to someone else's act. But 1937 wasn't always happy. Shall We Dance, which came out in May, had 9 new songs written by George and Ira Gershwin. 9 weeks later, George Gershwin died from a brain tumor. He was only 38 years old. The songs in that movie were his last gift to the world. He had worked on Can't Take That Away From Me for weeks, but when he heard that Gershwin was having surgery, he couldn't even finish practice. He told his lawyer in writing that he couldn't go on. Things had to stop at the studio for a while. When the song was over, the director didn't want to do any more takes to spare Astaire more pain. There is even rare color footage of Astaire going back and forth between takes with his head in his hands, looking very sad. After 2 years, in 1939, he played the lead role in the story of Vernon and Irene Castle. It wasn't meant to be a serious biography, but Irene Castle didn't like how Ginger Rogers looked in real life. Ginger was supposed to have curly hair, but she made her wear cut wigs instead. That extra time cost the company $8,000 more. Gossip magazine spread stories about Astaire and Edna May Oliver, an actress who was 53 years old and played their manager. Though not true, the reports were so strong that RKO had to tell reporters that Oliver barely left the house because of her arthritis. Oliver's last movie before she died in 1942 was also this sad one. The movie did okay at the box office, but it wasn't as big of a hit as their other movies. Astaire tried something new at MGM in 1940 with Broadway Melody of 1940, where he danced with Eleanor Powell. This movie cost $1.6 million to make. The cost of building a huge mirror set for their big dance number, Begin the Begin, was over $120,000. Before it was cut down, early versions were even longer than the one take that was used. Astaire asked Powell's solo to be cut short because people were clapping before he even came on. That was making him feel bad. He smoked 2 packs of Camels every day during practice, which is a lot more than normal. Powell, on the other hand, crushed 3 sets of tap shoes. While critics loved the dancing, MGM secretly gave some of Astaire's other planned roles to George Murphy so that Astaire wouldn't get all the attention. Then, in 1942, Astaire worked with Columbia Pictures to make the movie You Were Never Lovelier with Rita Hayworth. They agreed to try Latin music because of him, and Xavier Cugat's band joined them. The music budget went over $30,000 because of that choice. She worked out for 6 hours every day to keep up with the star's exact steps. But the company made sure they stood out on the movie posters. When it came out in Argentina, a kiss scene was cut out and the movie was cut down by 2 minutes. It was still a hit. Making Hayworth his most successful partner after Ginger, he earned $2.2 million in the US alone. Astaire was ready for a change by 1945. With Yolanda and the Thief, a strange movie that felt like a dream, he took a big chance. It cost over $2.3 million to make, which was twice as much as he normally spent. It had colorful clouds and stairs that floated in the air. It didn't work, though. There was a loss of $1 million for the company because the movie only made $1.5 million. There was Astaire's Waterloo, as Variety magazine put it. He said in March 1946 that he was giving up movie dancing because he was embarrassed and tired. He really wanted to start a chain of dance schools instead. Fans thought he was going to pass out because he had put $200,000 into that movie himself. When MGM's financial records came out in 1974, that number was found to be correct. It shocked Hollywood when he left so quickly. Gene Kelly even called him on the phone to ask if it was finally okay to dance again. But they didn't stay retired for long. Gene Kelly hurt himself playing volleyball in 1948 and had to cut out of the Easter parade. With only a few weeks to go, Astaire came back to save the movie. He made Judy Garland feel so good that she said she was at ease. They only made that one movie together because she was too sick to work on their next project. It was still quick to film. It only took 3 months because Astaire liked to film dances in just one take. In Stepping Out with My Baby, one of the scenes used a smart camera trick where the steps moved at different speeds. This was very hard to do in the 1940s. But it worked great and helped Astaire's career get back on track. Even though it was 1949, MGM still wanted to make the Barclays of Broadway, but Judy Garland missed too many days. The studio told her she could go and call Ginger Rogers, who was living in Oregon in peace. Astaire was said to have broken up with her, but she said she'd love to work with him again. They quickly changed the story, added a Gershwin song, and changed the dances to fit Rogers' style. They started shooting in just 6 weeks. They only made one color movie together, and it was a beautiful homage to the black and white movies they made in the 1930s. Then, in 1951, Astaire did something that seemed like magic. He danced across the roof and up the walls in Royal Wedding. But there wasn't any trick with the special effects. The set was put together on a big metal wheel that spun slowly while the camera was fixed in place. Astaire worked out with a harness, but didn't use it for the final shot. To keep from tripping over the wires, he had to time his steps just right. It was risky for the company to spend $75,000 on the scene, but it paid off. People cheered, and reviewers said it was one of the best scenes in the history of movies. They were both in the 1957 movie Funny Face. The dance was great. However, the 29-year age difference between them caused a lot of trouble for many. Hepburn was only 28 years old, while Astaire was 58. Some people didn't like it, even though the style, costumes, and Parisian settings were beautiful. Original pictures were made for the movie by photographer Richard Avedon, and the famous Think Pink number covered everything in pink linen. Talks about the age gap never really stopped, though. It was Astaire's first serious part in 1959, which shocked everyone again. He played an expert in On the Beach, which takes place in a world after a nuclear war. He showed strong feeling and stillness instead of dancing. In one scene, one of his characters killed himself in his car while a Salvation Army sign said, "There is still time." Brother. That picture took up a whole page in Life magazine. The reviewers were blown away by his performance. He was even nominated for a Golden Globe without dancing at all. It was 1958, the year before, that he made history on TV. NBC showed a full-color evening with Fred Astaire on October 17. The team had hidden cue cards in the set pieces because he was forgetting the words, even though it looked perfect. That time, he was 59 years old. That didn't matter at all. It got 9 Emmys in 1959, more than any other show that year. He was never happy, though. To get it just right, he had the team do a short tap part 52 times in a row. In 1960, though, things were different. Another live show had to be stopped for 8 seconds because of a blackout. People saw him look and rub his hips when the lights came back on. He had taken painkillers right before going on stage because he had very bad arthritis. In fact, he had a cortisone shot that same afternoon. The press began to wonder if he was dancing on thin air. NBC started recording his dances ahead of time to avoid more problems. Some people didn't like his part in the 1968 movie Finian's Rainbow, which had some racist themes. Astaire didn't like it when Francis Ford Coppola added scenes of black sharecroppers taking down signs that said, "Whites Only." He left the set for hours because he didn't like the change. Coppola would not give in, and she even fired the dancer who supported Astaire. It came out in October 1968 and made $11.6 million. Coppola mostly just filmed Astaire from the waist up, which made dance fans angry. That movie was his last full show. He played a mystery doctor on Battlestar Galactica in 1975. He hurt himself badly when he fell during one scene, but he kept shooting anyway. After some time, doctors found breaks in his foot that were from 1936 and had never healed. When the news got out, people began to wonder how much pain he had been in over the years. Ghost Story, his last big movie, came out in 1981 and showed a whole new side of him. Phyllis, his wife, had died of lung cancer not long before. In a note from December 2nd, he wrote that everything felt like a funeral. He even asked that the set be kept cool. So it looked like his hands really were shaking. He wouldn't let a double be used in a scene where he falls into a frozen pond. It came out in December and made $23 million. People told him how deep his feelings were, but they didn't know he was really sad. When those diary pages came out in 2000, fans finally knew how much pain went into the show. When Fred Astaire married Phyllis Potter on July 12, 1933, everyone thought it was a wonderful love story. It wasn't so easy behind the scenes, though. By 1938, Gossip magazine was saying that Fred's never-ending practices were stopping them from having children. Then, Phyllis had a terrible miscarriage in 1941. That's when the stories really got going. One tabloid even said they were going to adopt a child in secret so no one would question Fred's reputation as a strong main man. But Fred spoke up, which wasn't something he did very often. It was brought up that their son Fred Jr. was born in 1936 and their daughter Ava in 1942. They were mean lies, he said. MGM executives made sure that writers quickly stopped writing about the story. The clean image of their biggest dancing star could not be hurt by anyone. The truth was tucked away. But the stress of always having to look good never went away. She died of lung cancer in 1954, and Fred's whole world fell apart. He was 55 years old and had not drunk in decades. All of a sudden, he turned to scotch to dull the pain. Around 2 a.m. on May 18, 1955, cops stopped his car on Wilshire Boulevard. He was going around. A breath test showed that he was too drunk to drive. The records of arrests were kept secret for many years. The file wasn't found until 1994, by a researcher. It showed that Fred had been charged with driving while drunk. But no one knew about it in 1955. Without a fuss, MGM paid the fine. And got the case closed by the judge. Instead, happy stories in fan magazines showed Fred laughing with Gene Kelly on set. That being said, he did go to rehab for 5 weeks behind the scenes. Daddy Long Legs was his last movie. He got clean, and that year he even won a Top Movie Fan Award. There were already cracks in it, though. Then something shocking happened that no one saw coming. Fred, who is now 81 years old, married Robin Smith, who was 35 years old, on June 24, 1980. Her picture was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, so everyone knew who she was. People were shocked. The news asked her if she loved him or just wanted his money. Ava, Fred's daughter, didn't want to go to the wedding. Adele, his sister, thought the marriage was silly. They almost made a whole show about it by calling it a wedding of convenience. But changed their minds at the last minute. In an interview, Fred tried to explain himself by saying, "I'm marrying a friend, not a nurse or a gold digger." They were together until 1987, when he died. Robin never asked for anything else from him besides the $5 million trust he gave her. After that, everyone who didn't believe her kept quiet. Fred Jr. was born in 1936 and had his own pain. In the 1950s, Fred was on tour all the time, and his son wrote him angry notes that he never sent. He begged his dad to come home in them. "These are the only steps I know that you'll never be here to climb with me," he wrote. Fred found them in 1983, hidden away in an old storage unit. His health was getting worse by that time. Fred Jr., who raised cattle, said that they made up before his dad died. They were auctioned off in 2019 and sold for $42,000. They showed a side of that no one had seen before. The dancer had to always be perfect, so the father was never there. Fred did more than just dance, though. He was also quietly kind. He gave more than $650,000 to dance schools in Harlem and London from 1946 to 1958. He didn't want the money to have his name on it. He told them to think about dance instead of fame. But his kindness made things worse. In 1959, the IRS checked him out and found gifts he hadn't reported and odd tax breaks. His tax debt was said to be $200,000. 3-time champion horse Triplicate was almost sold to pay for it. In 1961, he paid the bill and kept things from getting worse. No one knew about any of this until 1988, after he had died, when a report came out. That note showed Fred had been very careful as he tried to help without drawing attention to himself from the tax man. He also fought Gene Kelly for a long time but didn't say much. Kelly got the lead role in Singin' in the Rain in 1952, a part Fred really wanted. This made Fred very angry. A letter that got out showed that Fred thought Kelly's style was rude and too athletic, like weightlifters dancing. Fred even tore up posters in the hallway that had Kelly's picture on them. A planned dance scene with both guys was cancelled by MGM to avoid trouble. The only song they ever did together was in Ziegfeld Follies in 1945, but Fred had it taken out of later episodes that were sold to TV. Private letters from Fred that were found years later said that Kelly's hitting was like vaudeville wrestling. That anger had never really gone away. It was also hard to deal with Ginger Rogers. At 2:30 a.m. on April 3, 1935, Fred and Ginger were seen leaving a hotel room together. They were supposed to be on set for Top Hat that same morning. There was a strict rule at the office. No love triangle between co-stars in real life. A private investigator had pictures and said they would share them. It cost the company $25,000 to get rid of it. Luella Parsons, a famous news columnist, began teasing a scandal that made people drool, but then she dropped the story. After a while, Ginger said they were just friends. But an old note found in the director's files said that the movie could fail if it had one more night like April 3. Fred also did awful things that hurt. In 1941, when he was on tour and stopped in Miami, he wouldn't come on stage with Tip, Tap and Toe, a black tap group. People still thought it was wrong, even though he said it was because of local rules. He later said he felt bad about what he did and admitted it was stupid. From 1963 to 1965, civil rights groups held protests outside of his Broadway show. Fred gave money to a civil rights group and hosted a TV show about black dancers to make things right. He talked about the Miami decision in 1970 and said it was the worst thing that ever happened to him. He also said that they should have stomped out racism instead of dancing around it. Fred's love of horses made things worse as well. His horse, Hi Hat, lost badly in the Santa Anita Derby in 1944. Fred put more money into racing because he believed in a crook named Nick the Greek. But because of the war, the horses couldn't go anywhere. In 1946, he had no more money to spend. After that, in 1947, the IRS found $400,000 in the Cayman Islands in a fake business. They thought about tax cheating charges. Fred quietly took care of the case. To pay his bills, he sold his Rolls-Royce for $15,000. He laughed, "Take the car. It dances better than my nags." Behind all of his charm, Fred was always scared. He began getting panic attacks after his sister Adele retired in 1932. Neurasthenia is a nervous disease that doctors told him he had. In 1927, he passed out during a practice. He was given barbiturates and put through early sleep treatment, according to secret medical files that were released in 2019. As he worked on Swing Time in 1936, he had MGM make him a quiet room where he could rest. To calm down, he played Hawaiian music over and over. In the end, Fred's wife Robin said that he kept a small vial of medicine in every suit. In 1976, someone asked him if he still got scared before shows. He smiled and said, "The feet are steel. The top part of your legs is custard." In July 1950, Fred was seen slouched in a chair while being trained for the royal wedding. His eyes were blank, and sweat was dripping from his neck. The famous scene where he danced on the roof was about to be filmed, as shown on a call sheet stuck behind him. After many years, more advanced scanning showed that the back of that picture had pencil notes hidden inside it. Fred wrote that he hadn't slept for 2 nights. Jane is still great. I'm off by 1 beat. Donnan wants to do it again. Feel free to smile, Freddie. Not possible. In a drawing he drew of the room that spun, he called it a hamster wheel. Even though he looked great on TV, it showed how tired he really was. In September 2025, someone shared that picture again on Reddit. It got a lot of attention in less than 24 hours. Others said he looked like a person, weak and worn out. People who make dance videos on TikTok copied the pose. The picture was so powerful that MGM announced that Royal Wedding would be remade and released in 2026. The world saw a different side of Fred Astaire. Not as perfect, but more true.